Are you a leader feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders? Register for the virtual workshop series Trauma in the C-Suite featuring Sabrina Gilchrist and Tayuanee Dewberry. Discover how to navigate the unique challenges of high-level leadership, especially in the nonprofit sector. Their first event is on July 23rd, 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss this chance to find support, share experiences, and learn techniques to overcome trauma in the C-suite. Register now and take the first step towards renewed mental health and wellness. The link for registration is in the show notes. Revitalize your brand and accelerate your impact with Eddie and Erica at Elevate One Consulting. Experts in organizational development, digital marketing, and much more. From leadership coaching to creating unforgettable digital experiences, we've got you covered. Visit elevateoneconsulting.com today. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Welcome back to The Unbroken Place, where it begins and ends with empathy. I am your host, Eddie Paul Thomas, and this week we are sharing part 2 of our conversation with Sabrina Gilchrist and Tayuanee Dewberry on the topic of trauma and grief in the C-suite. Sabrina and Tayuanee are two amazing women who are not only experts in this field, but are helping key decision makers cope with the realities of their professional positions. Make sure to register for their Trauma in the C-Suite virtual workshop series. You can find the link in the show notes. And lastly, I want to wish a happy Father's Day to all the active and engaged fathers out there. Let's get started. So that I think there's a lot there that people can take away, and there are a lot of resources. In fact, I'll try and put some resources in the show notes for our listeners. But let's move from the therapist and coach more into the area of peers and maybe even subordinates, although I hate that term, but we'll use it for working terminology. How can peers and subordinates support leaders who may be struggling with maintaining that facade of strength that we've been talking about?
I think it's good to have peers, because the thing that I have found that's been very encouraging, enlightening, and really a source of strength is understanding when you really start to kind of take off some of the layers and be a little more vulnerable. What you find is it's not just you. And there's something about understanding and learning that you're not unique in your struggle and in the hurt sometimes that comes along with being in these positions, and the extreme pressure sometimes of leading and feeling like you have to care for everyone. And there's just something about the collective that brings strength to be able to do it another day. So I certainly encourage finding a peer group that can be, I know this is probably a more ministerial term, but balm for you on those days when you're just kind of getting through. And then for subordinates, I had a staff meeting. Even in my most recent staff meeting, one of my group said, "Well, we really want to have a safe space where we can express ourselves and things like that." And a couple of the groups were going back and forth, and I stopped them. I said, "You know what? The best way to have safe space is to be one. Because if we're all safe space for the next person, guess what we all have? A safe space." I would appreciate that as much as you do. So it allowed me to step into that and say, I need it just as much as you do. So how do we create that together?
Become what you're seeking. That's brilliant. I love that so much. It goes back to the discussion about the culture that we're creating in an organization. And that's everything. And in my experience as a leader, as someone who is subordinate, even as somebody who's fresh in the doors as new to the industry, the type of culture changes everything. whether it's a safe space or not. And it always starts at the top. Always starts at the top.
Mhm.
Um, Curious, what are some warning signs that you've seen as a therapist, that you've seen as a coach? What are some warning signs that leaders may be headed towards burnout or experiencing, C-suite trauma or grief?
I think
I'm
the
la-
first one, I can see it in her face. I think the first one, the telltale sign is disengagement.
Yeah.
It is, I can't even bring myself to engage in the things that used to bring me joy in this relationship.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will miss that nuance.
Mhm.
And that's where the crisis lies, because the signs are there. It's just often because they're not looking for it in that person, it's missed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And you know, I do want to make sure people understand there will be days when we don't feel like doing it, right? There will be days where we don't feel like showing up. That's not what we're talking about. We're
Yeah.
talking about the pervasive or the chronic or the longer term span of disengagement.
Hmm.
Recently, people have been using the term quiet quitting, that kind of thing. That's what we're talking about. So I don't want to create a narrative where people think, oh, if I have one day or a couple of days this quarter where I'm just disengaged, that no, 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 no. We're talking about that pervasive, um, state. I think another way for me, everything is also in how we handle relationship. Leadership is relationship. um people don't follow a leader that they don't have relationship with, right? And so if you're starting to see or feel breaks and tears in how you are interacting and relating with your staff, that's probably a sign that you need a break. There have been times, I'll speak for myself, there have been times when I'm like, I love y'all, but it's time. I need to go somewhere and take a break, sit on a beach with a mai tai or something,
Hmm.
to avoid getting to that place of burnout. But that is a telltale sign. And then also, I'll add to it the brain fog, where you can't think as clearly. It's taking longer to solve problems or make decisions, feeling sort of bombarded, overwhelmed, even. Those are all signs that somebody is headed in that direction.
Yeah.
If they're not already there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll start with Tayuanee on this next one, because there's kind of two layers to this, and I know that you've seen it as a coach. So I would love for you to kind of unpack the unique stressors and mental health challenges that high level leaders face compared to the general workforce. Now, to make it more complicated, there's the for profit, where you kind of know your job. You may wear two or three hats, but you're doing that one thing. Versus nonprofit, where you may have your job and duties, but then you're wearing 11, 12, 13 hats as the executive to try and keep things rolling. So just kind of looking at those challenges, if you could, as a coach, Tayuanee, first kind of unpack what you see, and then Sabrina, as a therapist, what you see. If you could unpack that for the audience, that'd be great.
I would say the first stressor that I see a lot of times is you are expected to do less with more.
Yeah.
And you are expected to do it on a shoestring budget a lot of times.
Yeah.
And if you and when you're dealing with the stress of fundraising, a lot of people don't think about this in the same, well, with a clear mind. When you are in the for-profit world, you're providing a service or a product that in return people give you money. When you're in the nonprofit world, a lot of times you are providing an intangible product that people cannot pack up and take home with them.
Yeah.
So I'm essentially selling you, um, I'm selling hope and
Yeah.
goodwill for societal good.
Hmm.
That's a huge undertaking. And a lot of times you do that and you do multiple roles and people view it as a lesser occupation.
Yeah.
So and for that reason a lot of times the pay scale is different as well. So I want you to have a plethora of skills that will allow you to do multiple roles and do them excellently for less money and without a tangible product to present.
Hmm.
I think it takes a higher level of skill to possess that kind of, for lack of a better term, to possess that kind of bag. That's a
Hmm.
lot to bring to the table and a lot of expectation. And there is the same level of accountability, responsibility, compliance as the for profit world, if not more in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so the weight of doing that and then having a board of directors a lot of times that doesn't necessarily understand the weight of it because most of our boards of directors are made up of corporate executives.
Yes.
So there's that disconnect there. And so there's a lot that comes with the job that will weigh on you and cause you to have to bear a burden sometimes that's very difficult. For instance, I went through an entire divorce in the middle of my executive career and was leading board meetings, going to the bathroom, excuse me, trying to avoid a panic attack in the middle of the board meeting because you can't do that, right?
Right.
And it was 2 years later after I officially changed the name on my last name on my email that the board realized that at some point they'd missed the whole divorce.
Yeah.
And so we are required to do a lot of things and to possess a lot of things that I don't think people really even have a concept of.
Yeah.
And that wears on your mental health. I mean, I just mentioned panic attacks, anxiety associated with the expectations of the job while presenting the same level of competency of someone who's in the for profit realm,
Yeah.
if not a higher level of competence.
Amen to every bit of that. Every bit of it. Um, yeah. Sabrina?
I have so much to say.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, I will add to that. I know I'm supposed to be speaking from the mental health counseling angle, but I'll add one piece to that, which is working in nonprofit, for instance, because you are expected to do more with less, that does have a trickle down effect to your staff. And so, not being able to compensate staff in competitive ways, and then people still holding the executive accountable for staff retention. So it's like when you lose staff members, they're walking out the door, and people are going, "What are you doing as a leader to not be able to keep your team?"
Right.
It's not what I'm doing. It's what I can't do, right? It's like I can't pay them what this big corporate company can pay them, and I
Right.
can't blame them for doing something that will be better and more beneficial for their families. So
Mhm.
that's another element to it that I think creates some stress. And so as I was sitting here listening and thinking about that question, I I remember one question that always seems to come up when people are really trying to um, hear what executive leaders, are saying, and they're trying to understand the climate and this and that and the other. The question that we are often asked is, what keeps you up at night? As a leader, what's keeping you up at night? Now, from a mental health angle, I look at that, and this is the first time I've ever thought about it this way, to be honest. I
Mhm.
look at that and go, even the way that question is asked implies that this is a mental health challenge.
Yep.
To frame it as Madam Leader, Mr. Leader, what's keeping you awake? We're already setting it up. We
Mm.
already are acknowledging without consciously acknowledging
Yeah.
that there is a crisis in the C-suite. And so I long for the days that we are able to articulate instead, here's what's helping me sleep at night,
Hmm.
and leading and doing this work and really giving all that I got, for the social good, for the common good. These are the things that's helping me sleep,
Yeah.
as opposed to this is what's keeping me up. And I find it interesting that Tayuanee, has mentioned trying to manage a panic attack and all these things. And let me just tell you, it happens. So I can't begin to express that a lot of my work in therapy with people who are in leadership roles has been around mindfulness, deep breathing
Yes.
exercises to try to manage anxiety. Um,
Mm.
and I don't know if this is allowed on your platform. So if not, edit this part out. But I have even gotten to a point where I'm encouraging my clients to get what's called damn it dolls.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
because there is anger, there is frustration, there's all of this, and we can't go out in the hallway and cuss at our staff. We can't talk to our board of directors and say, I really wish I could just fight you right now. So
Hmm.
but from a mental health perspective, we've got to have a way to get that energy out of our bodies. And
Yeah.
so when I can't fight you, let me go take it out on this damn it doll.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these
Yeah.
things matter. These are ways that we can begin to chip away at the challenges. Obviously, we need some systemic change in
Hmm.
advocacy, like better pay for nonprofit work. For people to understand that nonprofit leaders and professionals are professionals. That's
Yeah.
a lot of systemic advocacy, but internally, which of course that's that clinical mental health side. These are little pieces, little things that can be done to try to help mitigate a lot of those challenges.
Yeah.
I would say too, from the executive coach perspective, we have to help people understand the role that nonprofits play in the health of our society.
Oh.
And for
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
professionals who choose to bring their talent to this sector, my commitment is to helping them figure out how to manage and navigate
Yeah.
all of the things that I mentioned before so that we can keep the most talented and passionate leaders in this sector for the
Hmm.
greater good. Because it's, yes, the nonprofit sector is a smaller economic force, but what would our society be if we don't take care of this third sector? The
Yeah.
impact would be tremendous. And so we've got to help these leaders navigate the trauma, stress, and grief associated with sitting in these seats and try to alleviate that while we work on that systemic change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, Eddie, I would recommend for anyone who maybe is interested in knowing more, understanding more what it's like to lead in the nonprofit sector specifically. There is a book and a movie out called Uncharitable. Um,
Ooh.
I actually, with my organization, convened some folks to have a movie screening and a conversation afterwards. So I'm more than happy to send you a link for that to share with folks. But
Please
um,
do. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It really speaks to those systemic challenges that create even more of a boiling pot, if you will, or a pressure cooker for leaders in the nonprofit sector. Um, these are conversations we need to have, especially as we are talking about tackling trauma and grief in the C-suite. And again, I reiterate that as Tawani and I have done this work and have conversations with each other as well as colleagues, we notice this theme,
Hmm.
and quite honestly, I said to Tawani, I was like, I'm not okay with The fact that we haven't had these very direct conversations about what leaders are experiencing in the C suite. Again, when people ask the question, we're usually prone to talk about how we are concerned about our staff, how we are concerned about getting the data and meeting the quotas and all of that. Very seldom are we being vocal about what we are experiencing sitting in these seats. And a lot of it is trauma, a lot of it is grief, and it shows up in so many different ways. And it is a unique way of showing up when you're in the nonprofit sector,
Mm,
especially.
yeah.
And we have to add that it has been amplified in this post-pan, and I say post, but in this post-pandemic era,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think amplified in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
It is a significant challenge for me as people bring me in to consult. And it's specifically around the idea of conscious leadership, servant leadership, um, to talk to one particular group of any nonprofit. And this specific group is in fundraising, every single fundraising group, as they deal with the pressure and the stress to get people who have the means, tons of means. They could do whatever they wanted. And some of the pockets I've seen are ridiculously deep. They could do whatever they want to support this organization, but the people who are trying to fundraise, those developers, are out there and they are literally saying to them, look at all the change we're making in this corner. And they're doing the song and dance and they're giving them the annual reports and they're showing the improvements, and that person, if you're lucky, gives you 10%, or I'm sorry, 2% of their expendable resources. That stress of getting that 2% and essentially becoming a competitor with the nonprofit right down the street that's just as worthy, doing just as good a work, is a part of that a feeling of isolation in one department that I didn't expect to run into when I started consulting
Mm-hmm.
and learning what they are dealing with. And so I would love to know, as coach and therapist, what kind of isolation have you run into or that you've heard from the C-suite that they're dealing with, um, just on a regular basis?
Um, so two quotes come to my mind, two mantras. One is heavy is the head that wears the crown,
Mm,
and is lonely at the top.
yeah.
Um, I think, and I do hear that quite a bit. To which my response, or my, even of late, my work of trying to convene people has been about trying to eliminate that feeling of loneliness,
Yeah.
and really trying to promote a narrative that we can get more done together. So eliminating some of that competition, though I understand everybody got to pay their bills and all of that. But
Yeah.
are there ways that we can turn this thing around where there is more true collaboration and partnership to
Mm,
cover more ground and to do more together, and to eliminate some of that feeling of I'm just out here on the ocean by myself. um, we know that as human beings, we are social creatures. We are, our survival from even an evolution perspective relied on community. It relied on relationship and interaction and people having one another's backs.
yeah.
And so we've got to find a way to bring that back into, or strengthen if it's already there, the work that we do in leadership, in development, fundraising, and not whatever sector.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out how to do this together in a better way.
Right. Right. How about as a coach, Tamani?
Wow, I think she nailed it there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the isolation. sometimes is, and the feeling of silence is deafening when you sit in these seats, and there is that expectation because the person, there's a certain amount of your personhood that goes into this work in the nonprofit sector that I don't think is equivalent in the for-profit sector. And so the isolation, the level of pressure that is applied to you as a person to deliver, again, on pushing an intangible product is, it's kind of unreasonable.
Yeah.
And an expectation that no one person should ever have to feel as if they are carrying it on their own, but often that is the case.
Yeah.
Again, when you're sitting in these C-suite or executive level positions, there are a lot of pressures in that way. And the big deal is if you don't produce, it relates to your very livelihood. And that's not necessarily a weight that other sectors have to deal with. So looking at the isolation, the pressure, the personal implications, and the fact that that can create a tremendous amount of anxiety and pressure for folks who are working in the sector to deliver on something that really, as you mentioned, sometimes is out of their control. Because you have people with deep pockets who, on a whim, may or may not see you as the flavor of the day.
Right. This is the end of part 2 of this amazing conversation that I've had with Tayuanee and Sabrina. We will continue trauma and grief in the C-suite next week, so make sure you listen in. The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Elevate One Consulting. The show was produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about both of these in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Little Glass Men and Captive Portal. We want to thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place community. Look for an ongoing conversation on Instagram and Facebook at the handle @UnbrokenPlace. You can also find some helpful resources at eddiepaulthomas.com. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter called OK on Second Thought on LinkedIn. Until next time, one love. At the Say Something Studios division of Elevate One Consulting, we don't just build websites, we craft unforgettable digital experiences. Imagine a place where design, development, UX, SEO, and management harmonize to elevate your brand to unprecedented exposure. A place where your website is not just seen, but felt, experienced, and remembered. Our expert team, equipped with unparalleled marketing insight, turns the everyday task of website design and management into a seamless, empowering journey. With Elevate One, you're not just launching a website, you're embarking on a transformative business adventure. We meticulously design every aspect, from intuitive navigation to stunning graphics, ensuring your digital space authentically represents your business ethos. Ready to transform your online presence into a thriving digital masterpiece? Visit us now at www.elevateoneconsulting.com and start your journey to digital excellence. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Say Something Studios.